You do not get to design your children. You do not get that degree of power. Hello and welcome back. My name is Valentina, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about how you can create a healthy environment for your children to grow up into healthy individuals. If you think that your children are the center of your universe, that's a very narcissistic approach. They are a center of a smaller universe that you are going to make for them. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that you have about 20% of degree of power or influence when it comes to your children. I would say rather inspire your children than influence them. We all know that a child is born not for your satisfaction, pleasure, or entertainment, but for the future generation. That's what we should be concentrating on. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be living in today's day and enjoy the present, but we still need to think about the future. Don't live in the future, but you should be thinking about it. Don't treat your child as a toy that you get to play with and put it in the corner when you're done playing. He's a part of your universe. He's a part of your household. And if you want to make some kind of a bond with your child, try not to make it the traumatic bond up to a point that, you know, he cannot do one step without you. I'm looking now at my teens, and I do think that to some degree, I made a little bit of a traumatic bond with them because they cannot go, I think about 7 days more without me, 7 days or more without me. And when I was raising them, I was always under the impression that I am raising them as very self-sufficient and self-controlled individuals. But I did to some degree made that traumatic bond, and I really urge you not to get too close to your children. You still have to have that boundaries between you and your child. So the idea that a little bit is good and a ton of it must be better, it's a uniquely North American perspective. The more the better. You know, I believe in moderation. I don't believe that you should be a fanatic of any kind. We do not need to enroll our children into all of the activities because it all comes from our childhood. If we didn't take those music classes or those paint classes that we wanted to, we feel the need that we should really make sure that our children are getting the best out of the best. They don't need to be stimulated 24/7. Just like you had a long day at work, and when you get home, you're trying to relax and maybe watch a movie or read a book. The exact same way your children don't want to be going to a swimming class or going to a paint class or any kind of class for that matter. I'm not saying that you shouldn't stimulate them to some degree, but don't overdo it. You are a shepherd, you're not an engineer. You can just step back and look how your children are growing. Don't try to mold your child like a Play-Doh. You know, 80% of their habits and predispositions are already developed. So you have about 20% in your hands that you can play with and that you can install. I'm not talking about routines. I'm talking about, you know, the psychological traits. According to science, our children are born with over 400 psychological traits that will emerge as they mature. Basically, as your child is growing up, you will see certain things that are going to remind you of yourself. Or if your father sees their grandchildren growing up, he might say, oh, I used to do that when I was a child. I guess what I'm really trying to say is don't strain yourself. You still have a life to lead. You still are someone's child. You still are an individual. So create a healthy environment, be a shepherd, take a step back, zoom out and look at the bigger picture. In doing my research when it comes to creating a healthy environment for my children, I ran into Dr. Russell Barkley. He is a clinical psychologist, and he thinks that we have very little to say in how our children will turn out. Basically, our children are not a blank slate that you get to write on. Dr. Barkley believes that this is why we have so much guilt in today's generation, because we actually think that we have that much influence on our children. We don't. You have to lift that weight off your shoulders and think that you have about 20% of influence, not more than that. That's going to make you so much lighter and so much easier to interact with your children, because you're going to lower your expectations and you're not going to think that, oh my God, my child needs to be extraordinary. The extraordinary is going to emerge as they grow up, as they are being exposed to different things. They will learn what they like, what they dislike, and it's not that much in your power. In your power is to create a healthy environment. Don't underestimate being a shepherd. A shepherd has a lot of influence when it comes to the environment. You know, we praise ourselves when our child succeeds and we guilt ourselves when our child fails, that we don't realize that we don't have that much influence on the end results. We are under the impression that they need to be entertained 24/7, and we feel guilty 24/7 if we didn't take them to a soccer practice, or if we didn't make sure that they're not just sitting and wasting their time. Just because you think that if you sit and you're doing nothing, it's a waste of time, that doesn't mean that the same thing applies to your child. Maybe they do need that 10, 15, 20, an hour break from all of the activities that you're trying to install in them. No matter what, their character will develop and certain things will solidify with or without your presence. Never change, they might alter, but they will never change 100%. It's quite hard to fight the power of psychological traits. What you should do is design the environment that they're growing. And here are 5 things that I do to make sure that my children have the best environment to grow up. So number 1, food stimulation, music stimulation. Number 2, physical activity. Number 3, intellectual stimulation. Number 4, and emotional stimulation, which is number 5. Let me go a little bit into detail. Food stimulation, I'm sure everyone is talking about it. It's very straight up. Make sure your child is only exposed to healthy foods. I know it's kind of hard in today's day and age, especially that we're entering the recession nowadays. Make sure that you actually teach your children and explain to them how bad it is to waste food. And when I was raising my teens now, I was always making sure that they are exposed to fruits and vegetables. I would just cut them and lay them down on the table. So food stimulation is very important. Music stimulation, I grew up with a musician, being exposed to all type of music all my childhood and all my life for that matter. In my teens, I can see that influence, to be honest, because now they're listening to the music that I was listening to growing up. And if you think that whatever you tell and whatever you impose into your children goes in one ear and comes out of the other, something stays, and I can see it now that something did stay with my teens. I always have some kind of music in the background, whether it's jazz, whether it's salsa, because I'm a big fan. But your children don't need to be always stimulated musically, I would say, just from the TV. As long as some kind of music is playing in the background, it's really good for them. It relaxes them, it makes the whole environment kind of chill. I like it. You should try it. Number 3, physical activity. I say it in a lot of my videos. I'm a big fan of having your children be physically active. It doesn't matter. It can be biking, it can be running, it can be dancing. Whatever it is, make sure that you involve your children in any kind of physical activity you can. Intellectual stimulation. It's very important to intellectually stimulate your children. For my toddlers, I do puzzles all around the house. I do books. For my teens, I do books as well. And recently, I encouraged my son. He's okay with listening to audiobooks. And the first book that I urged him to listen was Atomic Habits by James Clear. I'm sure you heard about it. It's a fantastic listen and read. I truly recommend it. I'm going to link it down below. And your teens are going to really understand the language. It's very simplistic and very straight up. And the last one is emotional stimulation. Very important. Hugs, kisses, play, praising your children. Emotional stimulation, we really underestimate. It's very important, at least in my household. I make sure that I always apologize to my children. It teaches them a habit to apologize in return. And hugs and kisses. I was raised and I was brought up and I was always kissed and hugged by my father mostly, but still that kind of installed that particular I would say habit in me to do the same thing to my children, and they love it. That extra 10 seconds a day when you give them that hug, that squeeze, is gonna make them that much better. It's gonna calm them down. Basically, that's all you have control over, those 5 things. Everything else, I don't know, grab a glass of wine, step back, and just watch the show. I'm sure you're gonna enjoy it. Thank you for staying. Thank you for watching. If you're interested, I'm going to link down below my class on habits. I'm talking about how you can connect your habits with your child's habits. Other than that, good luck in raising healthy individuals, and I'll see you in my next video.